Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. We look forward to having a good session. Although we only have 30 minutes to cover quite a lot of information, we'll kind of go through it in a step-by-step method. So hopefully you can gain a lot of understanding of how we've gotten feedback from our clients and from our internal services where we've gone through and try to bring Fluid and use it to its fullest potentials with some added enhancements, and just basically generally looking at what the delivered functions are as well as we roll this out to different clients in different industries. So with that, I'd just like to start with a couple of quick slides just about me. My name is Robert Harrell. I don't look much like my picture because now during COVID, with being stuck away, sometimes not having access to even barbers, I tended to go with a clean and shortcut look. But with that, I've been on implementations for the past 25 years, starting back at Deloitte Consulting and going on through in the last 5 years with Elire. For the past 20 years, I've been focused mainly on supply chain and supplier management modules through PeopleSoft, and then after Oracle purchased it, from all the way from 7.5 through 9.2 PUM 38. I've had multinational Fluid deployments. We just finished large multinational rollout, and I'll be bringing some of those experience to bear on how we were able to extend Fluid to be able to capture different points of views from different parts of the globe, and how we used custom development of using that Fluid infrastructure also for our own internal Elire tools that we use to accelerate projects and keep and maintain a good look and understanding of where we are along the way. So with that, another key thing about Elire is that we were established in 25 and have continually been able to achieve success through helping our clients by partnering with them to effectively implement and integrate a number of different software investments across the board. We provide strategic guidance to assist with the best practice core business process improvement, and we always look to unlock the potential of any of your software investments. And we hope this webinar can help you along those future endeavors as well. We always have a deep commitment to excellence and quality. We believe in not only partnering with you, but being there step by step to ensure that you see tangible results. And we always look to hopefully get to that status of being a trusted advisor, to be able to do these things like create webinars, to be able to provide additional support through strategic assessments, and also through the delivery of any implementation or strategy. So with that, I wanted to go over our agenda that we prepared. Again, we only have 30 minutes. And we have a number of different modules within the P2P space, or supply chain management or supplier relationship management suite of modules within PeopleSoft. We're going to start with a poll question here in a second, just quick get a sense of where everybody's at. And then I'd like to jump straight into a demo of, understanding Fluid very quickly, talking about eProcurement and purchasing some of the delivered functions there, but also some of the ways we've extended those two modules. And especially, we've seen a lot of encouraging requests about Supplier Portal with continued Supplier Portal deployments, and then augmenting that to provide the suppliers even more self-service types of functions. So I think that'll be a key one we want to touch on. In some of the things that we just rolled out in our multinational scenario, we had multiple month-end close support requirements that I'd like to cover. And then if we have enough time at the end, I'd like to talk about strategic sourcing and service procurement. I know that those are some of the niche modules that maybe not everyone uses, but we'll hopefully use that Q&A session to hone in on specific requirements and some of the additional options that lie within those two modules as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and start our poll.
Thank you, Robert. So the first poll question, only poll question, will be: how extensively are you utilizing the Fluid user interface? utilizing fluid whenever possible, deployed but limited utilization, not yet deployed but plan to, or unsure what to do. I'll give a couple seconds to answer. And I'm going to close it out here. So, Robert, it looks like people are all over the board, but really, I mean, utilizing fluid whenever possible, deployed, but also not yet deployed. So, a good variety.
Excellent. Well, part of this, and like I started with the fluid overview, let me close this screen out right there, is I want to just talk about some of the basics real quick. So as we go over into our demo environment, we had a pretty good cross section of everybody. Some using it a lot, some just getting their toes wet, things like that, and then a few not using it at all. So when we sign in, we can see that we're landing on what we have as our employee self-service homepage, and the employee self-service itself is a grouping of many like items that somebody might have across multiple areas for any individual employee. Then we have home pages that are specific to certain groups, like Procurement Operations, a custom homepage that I built for month-end close discussions, our internal Elire Accelerator homepage that I'll show a little bit about at the end, as well as the delivered additional home pages throughout each major function within the financials database. So within a home page, we have tiles, and we have multiple types of tiles. We have here is what is more of an actionable or an intelligent tile, where it's providing us the number of approvals that are currently waiting for us. We have a direct link tile, which will take us directly into the eProcurement functions. And then we have additional tiles, which gives us KPIs or additional charts, or even pivot grids that will help us understand how we're progressing on certain specific requirements or queries or information we're trying to get out of the system. So within all of this framework, we have security-based structures that allow certain employees to see additional information, like such as someone in financial accounting who might have access to GL, and others who might have access to something like asset management or project management or any of the other available home pages. Of course, that's garnered by the security model that's put in place, so that if somebody only has access to the employee self-service homepage, then that would be the only homepage that would pop up, and that they could access each one of these individual links. So hopefully that helps out some of the attendees just understand, from a high level, we have fluid deployments of home pages, tiles. There's different types of tiles. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the navigation structure over on our right side with the nav bar, because I definitely want to get into the meat of these Procure-to-Pay activities that we were talking about, but at least it gives us an understanding of where we're coming from. So obviously, there's a lot of delivered tiles, especially in your later PUMs. We've been on implementations where clients have stayed on earlier PUMs, maybe as early as 15, 19, or in the 20s. But every time you do a PUM update, or anytime you did an upgrade from 9.1 to the most recent PUM, all the way up to 38 and in the future 39, 40, those PUMs have all of these different tiles available. And one of the challenges we faced in the past is that if people stayed on a certain PUM when we're looking to do a little bit more of the fluid deployment, some of these functions or some of these additional deep dive items within, say, eProcurement didn't come out until a later PUM release. Now, that's something to only think about if you're not all the way up on the latest release of PUM 37 or 38, but it's also something to think about as your implementation strategy is laid out, that some of these additional features are created. Now, one of the things we did in some of our implementations was to pull back some of the functionality to say if somebody was staying on, say, PUM 20 and additional functionality came out in PUM 24 that they really wanted to take advantage of, but they didn't want to implement the full breadth of PUM 24 just based on a timing perspective or an impact perspective, then we have done two different strategies for that. We have been able to pull back from those PUMs and install only the specific parts that they were looking for, or we went ahead and created some of these tiles, whether they be direct link tiles to create requisition, or some of the more robust pivot grid based tiles to pull that information or to create that from scratch, which also allowed us to really model it to the current specific requirements of that client within that environment. But all that is resolved by going through the latest PUM in any implementation cycle that you choose. So within the eProcurement and purchasing structure, that's really come about, especially some of the statistics and the additional deep dive type of tiles, that's come out in the later PUMs of 30 and higher. And we really have seen a lot of change versus what was first initially available to us. So obviously you have an eProcurement section, which then dives down into create requisition, my requisition, ePro receiving, which is more of your desktop receiving, change requests, and change tracking. Now this is more of a model where it's just replicating the menu structure that you see within the navigation for eProcurement without having to drop down into the nav bar to look for eProcurement, to then go into the see, and as you see, these number of clicks just delay the amount of time that it would take to get to a specific content reference, if you will, or a page within PeopleSoft. Because we just clicked on the top eProcurement tile on the employee self-service homepage, we're able to quickly get to the favorites, if you will, of each one within eProcurement. So that's a lot of what's delivered, but how do we extend that to provide even more information to the users? Well, a lot of times, even within Create Requisition, users would then have to search for maybe a past order, what are they frequently order? Is there any information updates on what they should be ordering for a certain type of category? And that's where we started to create custom tiles to help them point to specific information. Maybe it's a query specifically looking at what they have ordered on a more recent basis, so they can see on a larger scale query without having to go with Query Manager, without having to remember what the query name is, without having to go through all those different steps, but also providing a custom-based tile on their eProcurement homepage so that they can go through to get to that information on a more efficient basis. There's a number of those different types of tiles that could be made. It's just whatever comes to mind, whether it's also KPI based. If you have a certain list of KPIs, maybe not by the individual requisitioner, but maybe on a buyer, from a buyer's perspective. If I go back to employee self-service, we'll take a look again at the Procurement Operations homepage, which has a lot of delivered tiles, but then we can also continue to augment that with additional tiles that are more specific to each organization's requirements. So when I go to Procurement Operations, I see a number of different things, whether they deal with sourcing events through strategic sourcing, whether we're talking about PO approval cycle times or rec approval cycle times. When we go through implementations, we work with each client to say, which one of these makes sense to your organizations? Are you currently tracking cycle times? Or if you have approvals in requisitions that garner the majority of your approvals and you just have flow-throughs to the PO, hence you get the approval on the requisition and then you're more of just releasing the PO or dispatching the PO through the PO process, you might not have a huge need for this tile, but we can replace that tile with something that makes even more sense, where it's specific spend analytics that would be required, maybe by a certain business unit or maybe by a certain area of your organization. That's where we've taken what is delivered through all of these different functions in the procurement operations and really target it to your specific needs. An example of that, and I want to hark back to what could be still implemented today, and some of you may actually have this, is the old OBIEE, which is the data analytics tool that you had spend analytics, financial analytics, and all of those types of additional support out of the box charts, graphs, reports, and things that bolted on to PeopleSoft. Well, all of that is excellent in its breadth and its depth and its number of options and the ways you can tweak it. However, that's a full implementation. And what we've been able to do on these home pages, whether it's procurement-based spend analysis, is just provide some targeted, specific tiles, whether it be a contract tile, maybe not group, because not a lot of users use the group contract process yet, but maybe a specific contract spend analysis that we want to show to the buyer group. Or maybe there's different home pages per different buyers in different areas or regions. We've been able to do that as well. And that's where we've targeted just taking what is delivered or the examples of something that is delivered and then really honed it into the specific business requirements of each and every client that we deploy Fluid at. Some of the additional aspects within procurement itself, especially as it's relating to purchase orders or requisitions, is how you're working with the suppliers, whether it's the supplier scorecarding across all those different aspects of acknowledgments, of delivery times, of substitutions, of back orders, of those different types of things, or whether it's high-level spend analysis. All of those types of items that we have up front are then looked at, we fit it, or say there might be a gap to your specific business requirements, and then we start to look how we can tweak that to make it more meaningful to each and every resource that uses these home pages. One of the things that we've done in that multinational rollout just recently is create a area by area homepage so that we can do exactly that, match up their queries to their specific home pages that they have access to on their security model. One of the things that helped is, I think everyone's aware of work centers. Work centers were available in 9.1. They were available in a classic form. They're also available in a fluid form. And we saw that some people were able to use work centers and get some really good gains in efficiencies and process improvement. But we also heard others say that it was a little bit heavy-handed for what they needed and what their personal requirements were. So we looked to add in additional tiles or additional links to pages or additional links even to outside areas in the effect of creating some of that work center functionality within the tile and homepage space. And that way we're able to do a little bit of a hybrid approach rather than just saying, all right, let's just put the work center link on their homepage and have them go to the work center to do all their work. It's just a question of what made sense and what was more efficient for each user base. So with that, I know we only have 30 minutes. We're already at 3:20 right now. I did want to go into a couple of the other areas that we focused on. I'll pop right back real quick to our agenda. Talked about the overview, talked about eProcurement and purchasing, and now I wanted to focus on a little bit of our supplier portal mods and changes or enhancements that we've made. I'm going to go ahead and log out here from our supplier portal and go into, or our employee portal, go into supplier portal as one of our suppliers. And not everybody has deployed supplier portal outside of their DMZ to make it publicly available to suppliers. This may be the first time you're seeing it. but it provides a quick and easy access for your supplier base, and probably not all of your supplier base, because most companies do not allow 10,000 plus users to sign up for the Supplier Portal, but it does provide additional support if you have external facing activities or actions like bidding opportunities through service procurement or strategic sourcing. Or if you're just simply providing additional information to your supplier so that you don't have as many calls on a consistent basis. And that's some of the places that we've done more of our additional work. Here I've created, you have two default homepages. One, the public homepage where you can see their sign-in links and just high level, here's what announcements you may have to your global supply group. Or you have an internal supplier homepage once they log in that they can get to more specifics. What we've also done is start to add in additional homepages, personal homepages for the supplier, so that they can go in and do more activities around maybe using e-settlement self-service invoice functionality, or just do simple invoice or payment inquiries, or go to additional purchase orders, or go to review the purchase orders that have either been dispatched or are awaiting acknowledgments. It's really unlimited to what you can add to this type of supplier-facing homepage to allow them to get to their work in a more efficient manner. And that's one of the big things around adoption of Supplier Portal, is that when you try to teach a supplier all the different menu navigations to e-settlements, to strategic services, to services procurement, to strategic sourcing, that can be a little bit heavy in terms of the workload, especially if you have turnover at any one of your suppliers. To be able to drill into any one of these, to look at manage orders, to get down into purchase orders or invoices, things like that. But when you provide that up on the screen through a tile to say invoice inquiry, that's pretty straightforward. It's very intuitive that way, so that they land on their home page, they see a number of different options, and even providing additional charting or metrics or KPIs based on how their services, whether it be PO acknowledgements, whether it be all of those things for the supplier scoring, you can add these things to their homepage so they can easily get to it. And that really speeds up adoption as well as understanding from the vendor, so that there's less onboarding time, there's less retraining time. If a supplier only comes on and off the system maybe every other month because they're not they don't have heavy transaction volume, then it's a lot more intuitive, so they don't have to continually call the help desk to try to identify, or even call your buyers or your key contacts to continually look for that type of information. So that's definitely one of the areas we've seen a lot of growth in the last year to 2 to 3 years, where people have been promoting supplier interaction, supplier collaboration, and then using Fluid to make it simpler and to decrease onboarding time, to decrease the number of calls that come into help desk, and it just makes it a more efficient process. So that was real quick on the supplier, but hopefully you get a sense of the ways you can continually add in additional information to make life easier in that aspect. We've got about 5 minutes left, and I did want to broach one of our other topics about month-end close, or just process-based tiles or home pages. One of the things that came out in the last 2 implementations was the need to make a process more efficient or easily understood by a group. And so what we've done here is to add in a specific month-end close homepage that can represent the different tasks. And here I didn't do the full-blown one that we delivered for the client, but whether it be something that our individual resource has to do, maybe across multiple applications, maybe they have to do an account reconciliation, and through that have to do a journal for a rebalance. Maybe they have to take a look at some asset transactions to ensure that they have properly been retired or whatever transaction that needs to flow through to the journals. Maybe they do need to do a little operational analysis through some of the pivot grids and additional details that are available. or maybe they need to run journal generate. There's all these types of actions that you could put in a navigation collection, which is a part of Fluid. You could put in a work center, which is obviously available to put a lot of these different tasks. But you can also choose to create a homepage specific to a certain need. And that would help just manage that process within a nice delivered interface where you have the tiles, even some of these being smart tiles where you could see anything that's out of balance journal, not out of balance journals, but any accounts that need to be addressed based on your specific requirements in your month-end close process. So just another example of how you can continually use Fluid to help bridge the gap between the nitty-gritty details that we get to in each page and the high-level process that surrounds managing a month-end or any type of process within your organization. So with that, I did also capture a couple of things on strategic sourcing and service procurement because they don't really have a whole lot in terms of applicable tiles within the system. We do have some things like what are the bidding opportunities, what are the bidding responses on both sides, but there's not really an internal service procurement if you have that module or if you have heard about it. It's where you're going in through and identifying, contracting, interviewing all the different individual staff aug types of resources, and then having them come in and do their T&E as well within PeopleSoft for approvals and such. So we've taken a number of those different aspects and create a personal homepage on those clients' Fluid deployments to help people interact with a lot of the cross-module information that goes on with strategic sourcing as well as service procurement. Of course, strategic sourcing has ties into not only purchasing by creating a purchase order, it has ties into a procurement contract by automatically creating a procurement contract, and even ties into supplier contract management where it can go in and you can start your document creation process through the award of a strategic sourcing event. So those are some of the ideas, and as we get close to the 30-minute mark, we just wanted to give you some ideas of how we see our implementations flowing from a just getting started with Fluid to starting to use more personally built homepages, personally built tiles, personally built processes that can be rolled out to individual groups within your organizations that would be tailored to specific requirements that you have, whether it be multinational, whether it be regional, or whether it just be process-based, like a month-end close process. So I hope that's helped stir some ideas in your head. And a couple of our closing pieces, which help us to wrap things up, is just to remember that the Fluid user interface has been shown to bring measurable improvement across experience and efficiency, and you can always continue to roll out additional requirements-based functionality. The next steps for those who are interested, you can contact the Elire representatives to discuss specific needs and how you can envision additional enhancements or deployments of Fluid to help your business, and to schedule additional time for in-depth demonstrations so maybe we can target some of those specific questions that you may have.
Thank you, Robert. I just wanted to wrap up with a couple of upcoming events that Elire is hosting. So we have the Elire Strategy Summit coming up, and that is going to be focused on people, process, and technology, which is going to have a variety of sessions over the 2 days of March 24th and 25th. Also, we have 2 webinars coming up, the Cabana webinar as well as the PTF webinar, and you guys can always subscribe to our Elire PeopleSoft newsletter as well. And as Robert said, if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out to either of us. I know he went over a lot of awesome content today, so if you guys have any questions in the following days, do not be afraid to reach out. And just wrapping up again, as always, just engage with Elire on social media. We post a lot of upcoming webinar information, future conferences, new content on LinkedIn, our Facebook, and our website. So feel free to visit us there. And we thank you so much for joining us today for 30 minutes. And we hope to talk to you soon. Thank you.
Hey, Katie,
Yep.
I'll add one more thing. We do have one question in the question and answer.
Oh.
So if Maribel, if you want to stay on, I'll go ahead and try to answer that one real quick. And if anybody else can stay with us and submit a couple of additional questions, we can always do that as well. So the question was, have you set up public user interface for vendors to report compliance with small business program participation requirements? So in the small business program participation requirements, I think of, just to make sure that I'm understanding that, is when you go out and you're already, or you're onboarding vendors, if you're using the supplier onboarding process, there's multiple checkboxes to say whether it's small business, and through that they have to go through different requirements. The way we've done that so far is to utilize additional functionality within purchasing to go out and do requests for information from certain groups of suppliers. You can specify what types of criteria you can send a request out to ensure that they are going in, and then provide reports based on that group who's been notified for updates to go in and see that they've updated their profile. Now, it's different levels of, how smart you can make the system to say, okay, what did they update? Did they update it appropriately? Did they send in their classification, or did they send in their certification? And there is still some manual tasks around that, but we've used some of the delivered functionality in 9.2 to go out and request those specific sets of vendors for communications internally, or for them to go in and self-service and update their supplier master definition based on what you've made available for them to update. Sometimes we only let them update addresses. Sometimes we've seen where they're able to update bank information. Sometimes, to your point, that they might be able to submit certain certificates or provide additional requirements around that small business program participation. Those are some of the devils in the details of how we would structure those communications and those messages that would go out through those emails, but we have set them up en masse before. So hopefully that helps answer that question. Yep, thank you. All right. With that, thank you everyone for joining, and definitely appreciate your time.